So now we're live. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this wonderful CSA Film Festival. We are very happy to have with us tonight four movie makers who did some movies in connection with CSA or food sovereignty. Well, basically about the basic, like the fundamentals of our movement. So tonight with us, we have Zamis Benicio from Manaus in Brazil, who made two short videos, one about the history of CSA in Manaus, and the other one about the legend of cassava. We have also with us Nathan Gibson from Brisbane. He's actually now in the UK, but he made a wonderful documentary about called Mycelium, which is basically about, let's say, community garden. Nathan, you will explain better than me, in Brisbane. We have also with us Maximilian Isendal from Sweden, who made a very interesting documentary about the situation in, let me spell it correctly, is it Jämtland? Yes, almost, good. And finally, Damien is with us for the documentary called Minga, Voices of Resistance, that he made or like directed together with Pauline Dutron a couple of years ago. I think I will start with a question, maybe to Maximilian and Damien, because in both your movies, I feel like there is like a common ground, or there is something in common. In your movie, Maximilian, at some point at the beginning, there is an explanation about the importance of La Via Campesina, the, like, let's say, small-scale family farmers union, the international one. And there is also a link which is being explained right at the beginning between the struggles happening in Northern Europe, in Sweden, in your case, and the struggles in Latin America or other places in the world. But can you maybe, for those who haven't seen the movie yet, can you explain a little bit the link and why, for you, this connection is so important, or what is common? What are the common struggles between Sweden, the Swedish case, and Latin America?
Yes, thank you. Very nice question and very relevant. I thought about that also before this, and I really like that you, like in the symposium, you talk about decolonize the plate and so on, and I think it's very relevant. The link is, I think, is very clear in Sweden. One of the most important export product is forest and forestry. It's actually more important to Sweden than the oil is to Norway, so it's really big. And we have a history in Sweden of like domestic colonialism, because that is what we talk a lot about in La Via Campesina and so on, and also here, I guess, about colonialism. And in Sweden, it's a quite rich country, so the colonizers come from within. So in history, 150 years ago, there was this big forest companies that bought very much of the forest land, and this had very large consequences. Partly, a lot of people emigrated to the US. And well, these companies have become very large, and they control a very large portion of this huge resource in Sweden. And so because of the profits from there, they have been able to buy land in other parts of the world. They buy in Brazil and Portugal, and right now very much in Eastern Europe. And it's not only, of course, the companies that buy, it's also they have the power to push the legislation also. So Sweden is a very large driver for neoliberal policies, not only in Sweden, but also in Europe, for example, pushing land for liberalization of land laws in, for example, Lithuania, but also pushing for EU Mercosur free trade agreements and so on. So there is a lot of links.
Okay, great. Yeah. And well, you answered also with this concept of colonization. And as you said, like the main topic in our symposium was decolonize our plate, Amazonize the world. I'd like to ask now Damien from Quinoa, who made this wonderful documentary about the situation in local communities in different parts of Latin America, from Central America, if I'm not mistaken, to South America. I'd like to ask Damien how this resonates in your movie, because I watched your movie and I saw like there were a lot of local communities who referred not only to the current situation, but who talked also about the past. They talked about the conquistadores, like the Spanish conquest, the model that was imported, also the beliefs that were imported, then Christianization and so on. So, Damien, would you say that this aspect of colonization is both like in the past and nowadays is really like the link that you see between the situation in Latin America and the connection to Europe, which is in a way perhaps still colonizing Latin America through big companies like the Swedish ones exploiting the forest in Latin America? Daniel?
I think yes. I mean, they even use the same word, colonization, neo-colonization. So their reality it refers to still really didn't change. It can be a country or a company, but the aim is still to go there, take as much of resources as they can, and then leave and let the local people deal with the aftermath. And it's obvious that we can see there all around Latin America. It's quite violent there, and also the fact that there are people fighting for more than 500 years now against this kind of processes. Well, for us, it was one of the reasons we made that movie, because there's like 500 years of history of fighting back these processes of colonization. And I think, of course, if we look on an international point of view, the capital financing that destruction mostly comes from United States, Canada, and of course Europe. I mean, it's the links can be directly shown, because the owners of these mining companies, of this big farming, most of them comes from Europe. But I think, in a way, that process of colonization, if we talk about food system, also happened in Europe. I mean, it's not like some European farmers, I mean, small scale farming, I think they kind of know that kind of colonization process as well. Since we have a model of agriculture that needs to grow to exist, it's bound to colonize the what's existing around. And one of the speakers in the movie, I think, says it quite clearly, that if we look at the Amazon, the preserved places, it's kind of the places that still are available for capitalism to destroy and use in a capitalistic point of view. I don't know if I answered your question. Or...
Yes, perfectly. Thank you very much. Actually, I think now we could turn to Zamis, because Zamis, you described, or you depicted the history of CSA in Manaus, if I'm not mistaken. And I'd like to ask you, like, do you think this kind of initiatives in the context that was just described, do you think these initiatives are powerful enough to try to counter-strike against the ongoing colonization process? And maybe more a question to the movie director. Do you think, like, how do you say, filmmaking contribute to this struggle to fight back against colonization? Two questions in one for the same price. Good luck.
Okay, first, I'm sorry for my English, but I'm gonna try to speak something. So, both movies I made for a cultural project in here. My principal objective is make and take this information and leave to the urban society who has low powerful of capital, who has no food resources, and I want to try to give this kind of information of those kind of food like CSA produce to the urban village, like because here we have just buyers or co-producers like with a very high powerful of capital, and my objective is take the CSA to the communities who doesn't have such a power of capital in the city, and I try to pass this kind of information when we have inside of CSA or food movements like a slow food or HEMA to this kind of communities, to doesn't have much information about food resources or organic food or plant-based food, or how to clean it, how to keep the food. Like I try to give this information for this kind of people. It's not so the persons who usually make part of CSA, and that's my way to decolonize it, that thing, because
yeah, that's very interesting here. I mean, like you are touching upon, I think, a very important aspect of our movement. Like we have people who are committed among, let's say, well-educated people with buying power to some extent. And you see your mission as a movie director or as a creative person to actually inform or get out of this like circle of convince people. I find it very interesting, and I'm wondering if Nathan from Australia would actually explain his own duty or mission in the same way, because I guess what we can see also with community farms in Brisbane, Australia, to some extent, might also face the same issue of going beyond like the circle of people who are already, aware of environmental issues and who want to start growing their own food. Nathan.
Sure. Okay, I should probably preempt this by saying I'm not actually from Brisbane. I'm from the UK.
Sorry.
No problem. But I think, like a lot of people, when the pandemic hit, my life changed very dramatically. And myself and Christine, the other director on this film, we'd been living and working in China, and then we went to Australia for a holiday, and the pandemic hit and we stayed. So I think in Australia, it's for a country that's so privileged and so developed in so many ways, what the pandemic really showed is, despite that privilege and despite that development, the food systems that we rely on in sort of a mainstream sort of sphere are actually still incredibly fragile. And when supermarkets are the place where most people get their food, even in Australia, the supermarket shelves started emptying. So that's why so many of the gardens that we were around were set up. Now in an urban space, I think in an urban space which is so corporate, it's really amazing to see people sort of taking that land back and trying to bring food out to the community, and grow stuff within the community and do that for themselves. And as filmmakers, we found it really inspiring to come across that. Whether that is able to communicate to sort of mainstream society, it's very difficult to say, but I think, you know, what we're trying to do with the film is really get that message out. And as filmmakers, we sort of, our role, I suppose, we're not gardeners or agriculturists ourselves, but our role, I suppose, is sort of to spend a bit of time living within a small slice of somebody else's life, and then making that message, taking what we find interesting and meaningful out and making that message accessible to people. So hopefully the film will sort of contribute to widening that discussion. And it's been really, you know, coming across what is happening with urgency in CSA has been really inspiring in and of itself, and seeing how much wider that community and that those ideas are.
Excellent. And in your movie, maybe you can actually explain the title of the movie first, because mycelium,
Sure.
Mycelium for non-native speakers can be a bit difficult to understand.
Yeah, so mycelium, it's, you know, it's a metaphor. This film is about, it's about radical action, but it's also about how radical action really relies on community and often springs out of the strength that already exists within community. And I think we just really like the idea. One of the characters in the film, Ruby, talks about mycelium, and she's just totally obsessed with what mycelium is, and that's the fungal network that exists under the ground. When we see mushrooms, that's
I think we are losing you, actually, Nathan.
Nutrients.
We are losing you. Yeah, maybe you can try to get a better connection, and meanwhile we can go to another speaker.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can maybe try to plug yourself with a Ethernet cable. Okay, maybe as Nathan brought a little bit this topic of traveling around, like I think Nathan has been spending quite some time with Christine, the other movie director, in China and other places in Asia. Maybe, Damien, you could tell us a little bit about your movie project, because it was not only like doing a documentary, it was also about traveling all the way in Central America, Latin America, traveling only inland, avoiding flying, if I understood well. Can you tell us a little bit about this trip? And can you remind us as well, when did this happen?
So the travel itself and the shooting, because the two happened at the same time, lasted from end of 2014 till the end of 2016. So a bit more than 2 years, because of course avoiding flights requires a bit more time. And well, the travel, we wanted to travel to be able to take our time, because the aim of the project we had was to let the people that we met build their own message, choose who was going to speak, where they were going to where we were going to shoot, of course with them we were choosing, and what they were saying. So this required to get to know each other and to work a little bit together, and then to get to the actual filming part. And I agree with Nathan that as film directors, we're only passing the message, and here that was exactly the aim as well. Is we read a lot about all these communities fighting against one form or another of colonization, and the message that they were giving out really pushed us to think deeply about our own culture and how colonization is rooted deeply inside our own culture, and the magnitude and the radicality of the changes that we would need to do it here in Europe. I mean, and so we thought, well, if those messages impacted us, we kind of, it seemed to us as a good idea to go and bring back these message with the less filters possible, and then make a movie about it, one or different movie. We didn't know before, because we were not completely deciding what was going to happen. We were letting a lot of power in the heads of the people we were going to meet. And so, yes, we decided to go to move slowly, and also let us be surprised on the way, because we had, of course, lots of contacts beforehand, but we knew that arriving there, taking so much time, things were going to happen while we were in Latin America. So we, as we supposed, it did happen. So we had the opportunity to stop in places where we never imagined before we were gonna stop. And if before, at first we were like with our list of contacts trying to call people, at the end it was more like surfing on the networks that the communities had already built, and they were telling us, you need to meet those people, you need to meet those people. And so we're kind of following a path that others showed us. So it's not only the message that got influence, of course, but the people we met, but also the way we travel and the places where we travel.
Maximilian, that was, I think that is your first movie, right? Am I wrong?
It is the first one, yes.
So how was your experience as doing the first one, and are you planning to keep on doing more? Do you have other plans? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I can fully agree that we are just passing on the message, and for myself, I can say I couldn't do very much more because I have no experience at all with the movies. So if you have seen the movie, you can see it's quite low quality, because I didn't know I was going to make a movie. I was going to visit Torgny, the main character, and 3 days before I was going to travel, I was going to bed, and then I realized I should make a movie, but I didn't have a camera, so I called everyone I knew to get a hold of one. So it was very it just happened, and
it was spontaneous. Did you get the virus? Did you want to go further, to do more now that you get started?
Yeah, exactly. We talked a lot about making more movies, me and Torgny, but unfortunately first came Corona, so it was difficult to travel. We talked about going to Norway or to other parts of Europe, and maybe also talking to other people in Livia Campesina globally. And then in spring, Torgny sadly died in an accident, so that quite put everything on hold. We had very much different projects that we were having, but we have had to continue the best we could, but it was very difficult. But I could also say, take the chance to say that Torgny managed to, he was the chairman of Nordbook, which is the Swedish part of Livia Campesina. He just managed to make a book about food sovereignty, and he had the first-hand knowledge from 50 years ago about politics, and it was in the beginning from Livia Campesina in beginning of the 1990s. And that book is actually first released in English, so it's actually available in English.
Nathan, I'll bring you back into the panel to ask you a question. I think, like in your documentary, there is a strong dimension of food democracy, basically trying to regain control, like people trying to regain control over the way food is produced and food is distributed and consumed. So I'm just wondering, like, in what I heard, the people taking part into these initiatives, they are questioning the current power, also like the local authorities to some extent. I was wondering if you think this example can be reproduced elsewhere. You mentioned that you were in China before COVID, and or like, you know, you were there and then you ended up in Australia. I was just wondering if you think the same kind of documentary could be possible in China. Tough question.
Very tough question. I think the short answer is no. Or the short answer is that I don't think people would. Well, so for example, the growing forward gardens, the gardeners recognized that there was some land that the local council hadn't used for almost 100 years, that land that was just lying dormant, ostensibly for corporate use, but not getting used at all. So they just decided to take the land and use it to make food, and distribute that to the community. And there's now an ongoing dispute between those gardeners and some developers who want to use that land to build some new apartments, which is a really interesting thing to see developing. I'm not sure that the political space within China would allow for something like that, but I think at the same time, in China, in many ways, people I met in China have a really strong connection with the land. And today I was just reading on Urgency's website about all the great CSA stuff that's happening in Chengdu and Beijing. And, you know, also like when I visited Chongqing, which is by some people's metrics, the biggest city in the world, is still, as well as being this huge urban metropolis, it's still a very rural space in a lot of ways. And you'll see people just going and working the land and growing their own gardens within their own communities, underneath, you know, gigantic bridges with trains going overhead. So I think like people have a really strong connection in China. I'm not sure the political space would allow for something like that to happen. I'd be really, really interested to see more documentaries about what's happening, you know, in the agricultural movements that are in China, and particularly to see what's going on in CSAs in Chengdu. I know I had a friend who I think was involved in one of the CSAs in Chengdu, and she always had really interesting stories about what was going on there when I talked to her.
That may be your next project.
Maybe. I don't think I'll be able to get back in China, at least for the next few months, but let's see what happens.
Zamis, another question to the political context. What Damien and Pauline described in their movie is like these local resistances with communities which are suffering from colonialization. I was wondering if you see connections between the CSA movement in Brazil, because you said this CSA movement is primarily with well-educated people, but still, are there like connections between these local resistances and the CSA groups, the CSA movement? Do you see connections, and potentially also connections with the farmers' unions, which are for some so powerful, especially the landless workers' union like MST?
I think that obviously have connections, because every CSA, I think in Brazil, we are associated to social movements. You know? In the same case in here is Manaus, we have some strong movements of women we are associated. We have strong movements of indigenous peoples who we are associated to, and we're discussing about that things on the market and the place we receive the food from the farmers. So, and in this area, we discussing the things, and we change this kind of information to. In my project, we just can see here 2 short movies, but I made it like 10 short movies. One of those movies, I speak with African religions person, and we discussed about food and spirituality and how we can feed our spirit and how we can feed our soul, and which kind of food we can eat in the same day. And the same way I speak with indigenous people who explain to me how we can prepare with traditional techniques this kind of food. So, and then we're gonna change this information and bring this kind of information to persons who doesn't has this thing in the school or in these spaces. I answer? No.
Yes, perfectly. Thank you so much. Maybe a question more to the movie director dimension. I think it might be a bit more challenging to shoot a documentary with people who are not used maybe to the media or to video making and so on. So Damien, perhaps this has been more challenging for you than perhaps for Nathan to shoot a documentary with people who are quite, how do you say, like fluid with this kind of media. I don't know if you can compare the two of you because you've not been in the same situation, obviously. But in your case, Nathan, if I understood well, like the communities who are involved in this community garden things, they are still quite heterogeneous. They are not completely like exactly the same type of population, if I understood well. So do you want to say a word about that? Like, did you have a different way to approach different kind of people?
Sure. I mean, I think, as I mentioned earlier, this film really is about, a lot of it is about community and how radical action could come out of a strong community. The area of the city that we shot the film in is not necessarily representative of what the whole city, or indeed the whole of Australia, is like. The West End is a very culturally diverse place. There's a lot of artists, a lot of activism, and Jonathan, who you see in the film, the councillor, is, you know, he's I think he's one of the
very radical.
He's very radical for, you know, for Australia, and he works with the Greens, but he's not necessarily representative of the party as a whole. I think, yeah, we had a lot of access there that was quite much more, I think the word you used was fluid, and I think that's a good, it was much more fluid an experience for myself than maybe other projects I've worked on. And I think, you know, that comes out of, I think, you know, people understood why we were there generally. Some of the activists, the more like radical activists, were a little bit cautious around us because they have their own reasons for not wanting to be on camera. But generally speaking, you know, it was easier than some other things I've done, yeah.
If I remember well as well, in your movie Mycelium, there is a dimension of including asylum seekers or refugees. Yeah, right. So that brings me to another dimension of this colonization, decolonization debates. I don't know exactly how to put my question, but first, I have a first question that comes to my mind that is maybe more to Damien and even Zamis. currently there is a huge migration phenomenon in Latin America. Like there are caravans of migrants going up north, through Central America. There are also people from Brazil right now leaving Brazil because the situation is so bad. And this phenomenon is kind of amplifying all the time. So maybe my first question is to Damien and Zamis. I don't know who wants to be first, but is it something you are witnessing, something you are also, like something the people you've been portraying, Damien, the communities you are portraying, something they are also acting on or against? And Zamis, you will tell us probably like a view from inside, like what you can say from Brazil regarding this dimension. It's not really a clear question. It's more like trying to see your vision of what is going on there right now. Damien, perhaps first, and then Zamis.
Well, from 2016 to now, the situation did change a lot. In in all of Latin American countries. For example, when we were close to Manaus, we did meet a lot of people from Venezuela migrating south, and in Colombia as well, people coming from Venezuela to Colombia. We crossed the border with lots of them, but it was more like on the way. We did meet a lot of people migrating, passing borders legally or illegally, but not while we were shooting the documentary. And of course, while we were going up north in Central America, we were kind of following the same way. So we did meet, yes, lots and lots of people trying to escape violence or just find a better life. We didn't openly film about this subject. It kind of it was an important subject, for example, in Honduras, because of the violence there. Lots of people were trying to move away from the countryside, and so the local community really tried to well, first of all, make the life in the village, in the community safer and better for people just to have something to stay for and to fight for, because the situation was so bad that people had almost nothing to lose. And then in Colombia, in the places really that knew the worst part of the armed conflict and still are suffering from that nowadays, and mostly in the countryside, the small farming organization linked to Via Campesina were also doing a brilliant job of trying to keep people in the small villages. So it was less easy for big projects, big destructive projects, or also paramilitaries or narcos to arrive and use all these lands. I mean, it's always kind of a strategy to force people out, to live almost by themselves, I would say, and then arrive and take what's left. So we did meet a lot of people who were fighting against the fact of people moving out, but not so many people working with people that were already migrating. There were a lot of them, but it's just not the organization that we met for the movie. We did meet a lot of them, like living there, but I wouldn't want to say exactly what they were doing, because I'm not a specialist, and we had more like informal discussions about that. So I would want to leave the specialist to talk about these specific issues.
Zamis, perhaps not as a specialist, but somebody who is actually living in Latin America. What is your take on this question? Like I heard today, there is a growing phenomenon of people leaving Brazil, perhaps also in Brazil, like people migrating from different regions to bigger cities. Is that something that is affecting the vision you have of your work as well. You said before that you want to participate to making like CSA movement more inclusive. So is that also an aspect you want to include in your work?
Yes, and I think the last 4 years who I spent here in Manaus, it was very difficult about this kind of situation because the Venezuela has influx, or in Portuguese it's inflação, but it's like 400%, and the kilo of the chicken is like more expensive than a car. So this kind of problem and trouble the movement and the immigrated. So Manaus is like the door of those peoples in here, and we have a lot immigrations, refugees in here, Manaus, and we have some kind of movement helping this kind of people, like Red Cross, ACNUR, and we have others, and include the government. So I knew a case that is indigenous farmers from Venezuela who doesn't want a piece of land anymore. They don't want a plant no more because they don't believe who the government or the piece of land gonna bring like a rentable and can feed the owned persons. So there's some kind of persons in here who try to help those indigenous to re-stabilize it in a land again, to plant again, and to produce food for they and those peoples too. And we here have, right now we have a lot Venezuelanos working in the commerce and in the factories, in the restaurants. A low price, is not the right price for a Brazilian receive and work, but maybe they receive like 15% less or 20% less than a regular Brazilian worker in here. And this is makes some troubles because there are another Brazilians who doesn't respect the refugees workers in here. And we try to restabilize it, to reconnect. And I met a girl here who teach the Venezolanos like they produce a Brazilian food for they sell, like to have a economy circular, like
circular economy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is kind of workers that I'm seeing here right now, but it last year it's much more persons in here, and this year they dissipated more. They now stay in São Paulo, in Fortaleza, in Rio de Janeiro, but until 3 years ago, we have much population of the refugees in here. And they came and they stay in the bus station because there's a camping area for the refugees. And they can spend the day in the camping because the government say who they need to find a work, and just they can return to the camping area about the final of the day. So this is kind of trouble and policies, and maybe we try to work on that in the future. So.
Nathan, back to Brisbane, where you shot Mycelium, the very nice short documentary movie. So there, community gardening is a way to include refugees or asylum seekers. I'm not sure about the exact situation of people who are involved. Can you tell us a little bit like how successful these initiatives you depicted are in being inclusive and getting asylum seekers into the movement?
Sure. I would say they were very successful, actually. Obviously, I think if you know anything about Australian immigration policy, it's one of the most punitive, racist, disgraceful systems in the world. And it's, it's terrible to see that other governments are looking to Australia now at a time when we're probably going to see huge amounts more refugees and huge amounts more people migrating as things get worse with the environment and with access to food and things like that. And actually, whilst we were shooting the film, there was a case where there was a hotel that was being used essentially as a prison for a number of refugees in the city, and we don't really talk about it within the film, and we were trying to make another piece specifically about that topic. That didn't really happen, but a lot of we didn't, it's still sort of in the works. A lot of the activists who you see in the Growing Forward Gardens were involved in protests around that hotel, trying to bring people out of the hotel and into the community. And even though the government had said that they would never be released into the community, not all, but a majority of those people, there was over 100 men in that hotel, and the majority of them have now been released into the community. They still don't have many rights, and adapting to life in Australia is really difficult for them, but there is a network of community members who are bringing them into the wider community, and the gardens were definitely a big part of that. And provided a space for people to be together, to do something together, to connect to the land. Yeah.
Maximilian, in Sweden, there are also CSAs. I don't know if there are that many, but I've heard actually about a couple of them. And there have been, in 2015, when there was this, how do you say, this situation with people coming from Syria, Iraq, and so on, there were also a lot of people who came to Sweden at this time. I was wondering if there were any connections or any such project connecting alternative farming or community gardening and migrants or asylum seekers in Sweden nowadays. Do you see a connection being made between both sides, as was just explained for Australia?
Well, I think there is a little bit, but yeah, some in some of the cities there is these projects. I'm not very knowledgeable about them, but there is for sure. Then, like in general in Sweden, there is not very much. Like if just a little bit is enough to get, I think quite some. It becomes recognized. But there is for sure the immigrants in. I think it's quite recognized. There's several projects, and some cases are really become really huge. For example, there was a person from Afghanistan who became a what do you call it in English? In Swedish, it's when they have cows and sheep like not close to the farm but in the forest. It's an old traditional system, and he was a person who started with that thing, but then he was. I think he was deported in the end because it's not in the interest of the state really. At the same time, they import low wage workers for agriculture. They deport these refugees who try to find a future in farming in Sweden. It's not very positive always.
We have a question from Stephanie, who is among the audience. Stephanie from the German Solidarische Landwirtschaft, German CSA network. The question is how to mainstream the audience, and maybe to go a bit further with this question. I'd like to ask you, making a film, of course, it's also like about meeting with an audience. So I'd like to ask you, what are your goals now, like in terms of the distribution of the movie you made? What were your goals at the beginning? How are you with the distribution? What are the perspectives for you, basically? And maybe this will be a concrete way to answer Stephanie's question, which is, of course, a very important one. Who would like to start? Should I start with Zamis again? Zamis Benicio from Manaus. Could you hear me, Zamis?
Yes. So, hi, Stephanie, and very nice question. So, my movie, my perspective of the persons who watch my movies, it was the people who has trouble to receive like good food, and persons who has a part in here, like trans persons, like gay persons, like persons who work with a restaurant, conventional, with some local farmers, persons who stay on communities, who doesn't have much more power of capital, and it's like that, this kind of person who doesn't have any information of the studies of the college, who doesn't have any access to institute of researchers, person who doesn't make part of the agriculture culture or agroecology culture too, persons who doesn't have any access of information about food, clean and fair. This is my public.
And you, Damien, with your wonderful traveling movie, I just want to stress that the landscapes are really breathtaking, and the portraits also of local communities are really moving, very, very beautiful. So for your movie, can you tell us a little bit what is the situation, how much distributed it is, what are the channels it can go through, and who was basically at the start the target audience?
Well, at the very start, I'm working the NGO I work for does educational jobs. So I work mostly with young people from, I would say, 18 to 30 years old in Belgium. So I think I was automatically thinking more about them. I was in trainings and other activities that we have, talking about what happens in other parts of the world, what of the way of thinking, of seeing the world, of organizing, or of fighting. And it was always us telling what other people were doing. And I wanted to kind of get out of the picture and let the people speak from themselves, and leaving without knowing what the people were going to say. So it was kind of hard to really have a precise audience in the mind before. So we did a lot. It took us as long to build the documentary with the images than to film it. 2 years as well, from 2016 to 2008, end of 2018. And it's because we tested it on lots of different audiences, because we wanted it to work with lots of different audiences, with people that had knowledge of history, but people who didn't, with people who had some knowledge of geography, but we didn't want it to be like mandatory to understand what was being said. And then we tried to take as much of the obstacles to make it seen out as we could, meaning that it's a free documentary. Whoever asks us to watch it, we would just provide the link for free. All the communities that are involved in the filming, because we see, I think, 16 communities in the movie. There were more than 32 involved, so it's a bit less than half. And all of these people received the movie. Some of them have organized video shootings as well. And we want the movie to live its own life. Like, we have our intention, but we know that people watching it will see different things, things that we didn't see, and we're happy with that. And so we, of course, we put some effort to have it in festivals, in some cinemas in Belgium and elsewhere, and in schools as well. We try to have NGOs working with it and other stuff. But also when people, we have some activist groups, some people from Latin America here in Belgium or in other parts of the world, asking us, can we use that movie for whatever we're doing? We always say yes. It's Creative Commons, it's with a Creative Commons license. So that's how, I mean, that was our way of doing things, but we're not professional as well. So it was kind of a, let's try and see what happens. And it's been working quite well, but of course we were very impacted by COVID because we were having lots of events when it started, and it kind of starts again now, but we had those 2 years with not much happening.
Damien, what would you say would be the age limit to show the movie in terms of children or students really getting the messages?
For school, when school asks us, we generally say 16. I think 16. Younger can get some things, but I think it's really dense. There's lots of things in that movie. It's maybe kind of the problem with it. So you need to be able to concentrate for an hour and 15 minutes.
Nathan, I think your movie is designed as a way to perhaps convince others to try out, to do the same thing. I was just wondering, to some extent, as a director, would you be a little bit frustrated not to be able to bring counter voices as well? If you see what I mean. Like, during our debate, we managed to see some limits of our movement. Zamis really said that his goal is to bring the message to another part of the population. In your case, Nathan, I really I don't want to be provocative. I just want to ask you, like, your initial idea was basically to get the message from these communities, I mean, this community in Brisbane, out to other parts of the population. Would you try in the future? I don't know. Are you following this community? Do you see also the limit? Would you be interested in coming back in 5 years, do another documentary, and perhaps show also things that might have not worked so well? I don't know. Or the challenges they are facing as well.
The short answer is yes. That would be great. And I think, community gardens are very organic things, and that sort of, we let that really inform the filmmaking process. So we actually initially planned to make, a really short piece, film it very quickly, get it out on Facebook or whatever. And it was just, the scope was initially much smaller, but then as it went on, certain things got delayed because of COVID, or people were busy and stuff, and it just ended up taking a lot longer to film, but that worked. And I think that really informed the film and fed into the storyline. So we actually shot over about 6 or 7 months. Yeah, and it just kind of grew, and we would have loved to maybe have even made a bit of a longer edit, and for a short film we've already got a lot of voices and a lot of characters in there, so I think trying to cram anything else in would probably be very difficult and would probably make the film feel a little unfocused. I think we pushed that part of it to its limit, but yeah, I mean, it would be great to come back in a year. As I say, with this garden that's threatened by development, I think that's a really interesting story, and I'm sort of sad that I'm not in Brisbane right now to follow that story and see where that leads. I'd be interested to see what happens with that, and I think that story says a lot about, you know, what Brisbane and a lot of cities are like as essentially corporate spaces. Or that's how some people see them. Yeah.
And what is the situation now with the distribution of the movie?
Sure. So this is the first time that either me or Christine have entered a film into festivals, and we actually had quite a successful run with it. So it's been in a number of different festivals. We've won a few awards. It showed at a really great festival in Detroit recently, called Better Cities Film Festival, which I'd certainly recommend looking into. And is going to be screening in London next year. And also, I think much like Damien was talking about with his film, I think really the strength in this film relies on it existing community screenings. So within Brisbane, we did a lot of community screenings, and we're hoping to do more in the future. I think maybe next year, to tie in with the screening in London, we'll try and do a little tour in the UK. I'll identify a few, you know, music festivals and community projects and stuff that we could take the film to. Yeah. It's been a really good experience.
Nathan, by training, are you a photographer or a movie director or somebody else? I saw on your personal webpage, I think I saw a lot of pictures also, no? Photographs.
Sure. Yeah, I was originally a photographer, and then when I first went to China, I studied what's called multimedia journalism. So I have I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, I guess you could say. But I feel I love writing and I love photography, but I think, you know, my strongest strengths at the moment are in filmmaking.
Wonderful, and good luck for the next projects. I'd like to end our discussion because we've been together more than 1 hour already. It's been a fascinating discussion, but I'd like to ask each of you to come up with a question to any of the other panelists. Are you ready for that? And who would like to start? I can leave you a few seconds to make up your question if you want.
I would like to start. It's like a technical question because this is my first experience of making a movie or directing a movie. And I would like to make more documentaries. And my question is, how did you prepare for a documentary? Did you write first the whole thing of the documentary? Or did you have some ideas, make some shots, get some images, and then you make a sequence and make a story arc? So this is my question for the Damien, Maximilian, and Nigel.
Question for everyone. Perfect, Samis. Very good. Who wants to go first among the documentary makers?
I can just say I didn't prepare at all, really. Just like a couple of points, like, oh, we should talk something about forestry, and that's quite obvious. So I think it was really good to talk with the persons that were in the movie, but otherwise I have really no advice. Sorry.
The shots from Sweden in winter are really beautiful as well. And yeah, thank you, Max, for your answer. Damien or Nathan? Damien, perhaps first.
Well, I have a film director friend who's much more professional than I am, and he helped us quite a lot with the editing, and he told me, you did that the worst possible way. So I mean, it's because it required a lot of work. We really didn't want to write it before filming. We didn't even know if we will have to make like lots of small videos. It was our first idea, but then that the idea of the movie kind of came along the way, because the people we met put so much energy into it that we wanted to make like the best we could. But so we wanted to be really close to what people were saying. So we had to write everything down, see the main topics, and then arrange the topics. And it was yes, months and months of work just to build kind of what's in the documentary now, because we came back with these hundreds of hours of filming. So it was a very interesting experience. I wouldn't do work that way again, because I think I don't have the time to, now that I have other obligations to care for. But it was really, I mean, really interesting way of getting all that information sorted out. And but yeah, the writing came after the shooting. And I think when it's a movie with lots of interviews, it requires a huge amount of work. I mean, we witnessed it, and but now we still have lots of images, and we would be happy to share it. And if someone wants more of information of one of the things that are in the movie, please ask. And it's all for the community.
Nathan, did you write first or shoot first?
We did not write first. No. And we had a rough idea of what we wanted to achieve, but as I say, it was very organic, and we just sort of, I think it's different with every project. Sometimes you plan ahead and you know what you want to get before you go, and other times you just have to kind of insert yourself into what's going on and follow your nose. And I think that's what we did as well as we could with this. Yeah, just tried to keep it spontaneous. Yeah, the editing process was really long, particularly for such a short film, and we put a lot of work into that. And but I think it's stronger for it. It feels natural, and I think, you know, the films, the documentaries that I really like, the kind of work that I am most interested in is that work that you can have debates about what is reality in film, but, you know, work that feels natural and work that feels close to people's experience of the world.
So you basically, you met people, you went there and so on, and you I mean, the storyline started to grow organically from the people you met, right? In a way.
Yeah, sure. Well, we were aware of the gardens, and Jonathan and the office that he works with put us in touch with the gardeners, and then, you know, we would go and meet people, talk about what they were doing, and usually just start filming if something interesting was happening. Some of the gardens we just visited once or twice, and some of them, like the Growing Forward Gardens, we were back there quite a lot and saw a lot of change there. And in fact, often we've been there without cameras. And I think, you know, as a filmmaker or anybody who's making documentary, it's important to be a human being first and a filmmaker or a documentary maker second. And you don't always need to be kind of shoving a lens in somebody's face. Sometimes the story is, doesn't need to be recorded.
Nathan, do you want to be next asking a question from another panelist?
I'm curious from everybody if you have plans for another project in the future, and if so, what that might be.
Who will be first answering? Zamis, perhaps?
Yes, I have some project for the next one. I would like to finish this kind of documentary that I'm take this year, because I make the shot on the pandemic final. It's not final, but the midway of the pandemic, and I try to explain more than Amazonic history of the food, or I think this is the Amazonic history food.
So more projects
and
like the.
I would like to.
So more projects like Dia de Manioca. Sorry, I can't. Mandioca. I can't remember the title in Portuguese, but
Yes.
the same kind of short movies.
Yes. But it's not just like this one. The Dia de Mandioca tells the legend of the mandioca, of the cassava, and I try get the reference, the God of War. I don't know if you understand who they make the history of the bullet, now see the making the factory. So I put the camera on top of the cassava, and we going with the voices. So who speak on this movie? It was the very young child, and he's indigenous, the Mura, from the Mura ethnic in here, and they has many more other histories of food in here, because here in the Amazon we have large histories about food, about earth, about how this thing appear in the nature. So I would like to make project who tells this kind of histories in here.
Obrigado. Damien, perhaps your next project.
I'll have to choose first. A few ideas are being studied right now, but I think one of the something I would really like to do is the movie Minga that we made is really shows a general point of view. It was the aim to have that kind of idea of different the common speeches that come from different places of a whole continent. And we realized shooting that movie that so many interesting things, maybe the most interesting things happen while the cameras were turned off, and that the people, each individual or any community would really in their day-to-day life also be as strong as they talk in the movie. So I would like to have a very specific movie, like maybe on 1 or 2 people maximum, after the very general, something very specific, and kind of show how they embody the resistance that they talk about.
Marvelous. Max, your next project. I think you perhaps answered the question at the beginning, but tell us again.
No, I don't think I answered this one. And I think it's interesting what you said, Damien, about focusing on a few persons, and that's exactly what I did. I focused very much on Torgny and also a bit of 2 other farmers, and then I've taken a little bit. And that is what we talked about, me and Togne, about. We would do another movie that we would actually really compare with a completely different place. And I think like most of our movies is quite like focused on a certain place or a certain whole continent maybe, but still, and I think that's what we talk about also in the movie, how the strength of La Via Campesina, that this is a global movement, and that it is something that we can use to build like community and togetherness. That's what we face is quite a lot problems from the same legislation with the World Trade Organization and these other like global agreements that very much affect agriculture and so on. And so would be really nice to like be able to really compare what are the similarities and so on. It's a really nice film also from Senegal, which was, I think it was would be a little bit like if we could combine like a movie filmed in Sweden and one in Senegal and so on, like, and that is also what I planned to ask, if that is something that you have thought about, like really making a movie that compares different places, but still not losing losing the ability to, like you said, to talk to a few persons that can really tell their story and their struggles and so on. I don't know if I made it comprehensive, but like.
Well, this is your question to the panelists, right? Like, because you have one question to ask each, and from the other panelists.
Yes.
So your question is like, do you have any project combining different, how do you say, different fields or different areas? Maybe...
Yeah, or also, if not, your thoughts on it, maybe. So it could be relevant for you either way.
Yeah, like the four of you could actually collaborate in a kind of multi-field, multi-space project. How does it sound to you? To you all? Urgency would be interested in such a project for sure.
Sure.
Great, Nathan is for it.
When do we start?
Now. I don't know if somebody wants to take this to answer this question. Or otherwise, there is also Damien who has the right to put one question to the other panelists as well.
Well, maybe I try to do both. I don't know if I understood well the question, but the movie that we made with Pauline, it doesn't really compare different places, but at first we were thinking that was what we were gonna be doing, saying all those people are really interesting, and we want to show what are the messages that come from all those different places. And it was while we were filming that it became really obvious that the common ground and the common messages were much more important than the differences, and that we had to build something that showed the link, the similarities, and not saying that there isn't any differences. Of course, there's loads of differences, but when we just let people speak about what was the most important for them, and it really like started to build something that we wanted to show, and that's how it happened. So by going to different places, we understood something we weren't thinking about before doing it. So I would recommend such way of working. And also there's lots of people that really helped us making those documentaries, because we talked a little bit about how is it to film with people that aren't used to it. But we met actually lots of people that have community medias. So we learned a lot about people actually doing documentaries, radio, and lots of things. And I think something can be done also with lots of different film directors all around the continent for sure, but all around the world. There's lots of very interesting stuff being produced everywhere. And my question for the others was, what made you choose to use video and not another type of media? There's so much video right now, so I was thinking, why video and not writing or photography or something else, or music?
You want to get rid of competitors, or?
No. I think, I mean, I can explain why I did it, but I think it's not such an easy choice.
Do you want to start by explaining, Damien, first why you made the choice, and then we pass the question to the other panelists?
Yeah, very shortly, we decided to make a movie because we were thinking that compared to something you read or listen to watch a movie, people get together, and so can talk about it afterwards. And we really wanted that after the movie, people have like questions, think about things, and have the ability to talk with others about it. So that was one of the main reasons.
Samis, do you want to be next answering the question put by Damien?
I really don't understand the question.
Okay.
Can you just repeat?
The question was, why did you choose video rather than another type of media, rather than writing, or I don't know what Damien had in mind exactly, but in your case, you chose animation, actually. Sorry. You chose 2 movies. But why? Yeah, why this type of media rather than anything else?
Okay.
What do you see as the power of video?
I never worked before with a video. I work with some, I don't know how did you say, but collages. It's like beds side by side on front.
That's what
like
we see at the beginning. That's what we see at the beginning of your videos, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I never worked with animation before, just with photographs or like one shot for each time to make our animation. And I think the video, it's more educated quickly to pass the message. And that's the reason, because what I'm doing in the project of the visual arts project, we can pass the message of the most things who I prepare. I prepare videos about food and spirituality, food and conservation, about how fruit growing and they plant it, and how we get the food until the final consumer, and mostly kinds of videos. And I think to the quickly message we can pass about the video more than the other type of information. And it's easy for children to until the elders see and receive this kind of message.
Maximilian, in your case, that's also a question. Why did you choose video and not, for example, podcast, which is also something that is very that is used more and more, increasingly used, and perhaps also a very nice media. We always think of farmers who might be working in the tractor and who could perhaps listen to podcasts rather than checking a video, for example.
It's a really good question. I think actually, we also have now a podcast. It's in Swedish though, but we do, and we also had already a magazine. So, and of course, I didn't know anything about filmmaking, so I thought that is easy. It's just taking a film camera, and so that's easy, I thought. And if you make a movie that has that bad quality, then it is easy. Yeah, and like Simon also said, it's easy to watch. It's like should be easy to spread, I thought. Really, I don't think I really thought it through any more than that. But it's
Can you just very briefly say a word about the distribution of the movie? Like it's on YouTube. Is it like distributed through other channels?
No, it's only on YouTube. I'm not really good at like what do you say, marketing, unfortunately. But yeah, we try to use it in like in education, for the organizations, different kinds of education, and different universities, or actually one university at least, and some different popular schools have shown it apparently. So that's nice, but I don't know. I have no strategy. It's just to do what I can, and that is something I should have asked you for, how to spread more. But I asked another stupid question instead.
Nathan, the question is a true one as well for you, because you've been involved in so many different creative arts. So why did you choose video in that case?
I think it just felt like the right medium for this project. And I think something Damien talked about is, video has a really powerful social ability. You don't just watch it on your laptop, you can also put it in a cinema or in a community hall or in a school or wherever, and it's just a great tool for sort of bringing people together and starting conversations. What I will do though is I'll put in the chat, so Jonathan, who's in the film, the counselor, he's really good at communicating through social media and through his website, and his office also commissioned a zine, which I've got here, called Creating Food Resilient Neighborhoods. I've just put a link to his website where you can download the zine as a PDF, and that was designed by Megan, who did all the photographs that we used in our website and everything else. I'll put our website as well. So in a sense, this is actually a bit of a multimedia project. It's not just about the film. It's about the zine, and it's about the community screenings are kind of part of the project. They're not separate from the film, if you know what I mean.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure having you on the panel. So once again, all the movies are available on Urgency YouTube channel, except your movie, Damien, Voices of Resistance, Minga Voices of Resistance. But perhaps we can show the trailer of the movie, if you don't mind. For closing the session, we could end up with this. We've been talking about CSA Manaus, a short movie by Zamis Benicio from Manaus, Brazil, about also Dia da Mandioca, which is also in our selection by Zamis as well. So two short movies by Zamis Benicio. We've been speaking also about the land we inherit, sorry for my English, the land we inherit, a global struggle in the perspective of Jämtland by Maximilian Isendal. And we've been talking a lot also about Mycelium Urban Food Uprising by Nathan Gibson and Christine Schindler with Jonathan Stry, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, counselor for the GABA Awards.
Jonathan
Three. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll end up with the trailer from Minga, Voices of Resistance, because that's the only movie which is on a different platform on Vimeo. Let's try to enjoy it for a second. And let me check if I have the right trailer, if it's in. Damien, would you like to send the link to with English subtitles?
So I'm not on the computer I'm
okay.
used to, so I'll try, but it might take a second.
While we are waiting for the link to come, we're receiving some some signs of appreciation from the audience. Thank you very much. And if there is really a last question from any of you, including you, Stephanie, or Barry, I see Barry Gibson is also on the meeting, so potentially there could be a last question from the audience if it's otherwise.
I just sent the link in the chat.
Perfect. Let me share it right away.
Well, I just hope some of your videos will be translated into German, and that we will manage to translate German videos into English.
That would be more wonderful. That's our next collective project, I guess. I hope you can see that. Wait a second. I have to say this week have been a week of a lot of online situations, and I feel I've been transforming myself into a strange online creature. But to some extent, some of the functionalities are still difficult for me. Here we go. So let's finish with this nice trailer.
Siempre se habla de los territorios indígenas.
Wait a second, sorry. I just want to put it.
Como territorios deshabitados, en los que viven población bárbara, incivilizada.
Antigamente, eles não usaram nenhum tipo de lei para tirar nossos vovós, nossos tataravós do tecorrá.
No había escasez de nada, pero después que lo sacaron había mucha escasez, mucha vergüenza y pena e tristeza igual.
Então nós ninguém estava preparado para poder enfrentar, para poder defender a nossa comunidade, nossa família.
La educación viene a cambiar nuestra mente, pero la contaminación viene ya a matar nuestra gente.
Porque necesitan un territorio, porque ellos van a explotar, porque ellos le necesitan el carbón, y a costa del dolor de otro, no hay derecho, no hay derecho.
Entonces allí fue cuando la comunidad se lanzó.
Si no hay presión, no hay solución. Si no hay movilización, no hay solución.
Hay que recuperar la tierra, pero hay que recuperar todo lo que la tierra nos da.
Solo tenemos que utilizar lo que necesitamos para sobrevivir. Que no debemos destruir más la tierra para acumular riqueza. Una riqueza que al mismo tiempo nos destruye.
Dinheiro, para mim, é um papel, é a pele da floresta.
La selva es nuestro mercado, la selva es nuestro hospital, la selva es nuestra universidad. Toda es nuestra espiritualidad, porque de ella nosotros dependemos.
Si me quedo con los 500 años y con toda la violencia que se ha ejercido, que nunca la voy a olvidar, pero que me tiene que servir para hacer algo distinto.
Que escuchen quien quiera escuchar, que entienda quien quiere entender, porque ahora es la hora de que estos suelos vuelvan a ser sembrados con el paso de los pueblos originarios.
Thank you again, everyone. Have a good evening, a good Saturday night. Thanks a lot for this fascinating exchange.